should have about 10 drinks by now, but I've only had 2, so we'll see how that goes. Hi, my name's Danielle, and I'm going to tell you about how I figured out reality, or failed to do so. It started when I was born, and when I was born I didn't know shit about anything, as I suspect most people here. In the same situation. So I was born, I didn't know anything about anything, and kind of assumed by default that everything was extremely simple. Then I found out that you have to shit and eat and sleep. Then I found out that you also have to learn how to walk. Then I found out you also have to learn how to talk. Then I found out that other people had thoughts as well, and it just got increasingly complex. And then fast forward a bit, I turned 6 years old and I had the world kind of figured out. There were 2 sides. There was the good side where you had people were good. It was the living world. And then you had bad side, which were monsters and the dead world. And this was pretty clear. And then I was reading with my brother a choose your own adventure book. And it had pictures in it, and there were skeletons, and that was part of the bad side. That was like the dead world. And I told my brother Gabe, skeletons are really scary, which is true. And my brother Gabe, doing his job as a big brother, tried to make it more scary to me, and said, you know what's even scarier? We all have a skeleton inside us. And I said, you're obviously just saying that to scare me, and it's not working because it's so far-fetched. I'm not going to believe that. We can't have a skeleton inside us. Because at that point I figured that what happened is you died and you turned into a skeleton. And that's what happened. And there were 2 ways you could die. You could either get run over by a car, or you could get eaten by a monster. And those were the 2 possible deaths. And Gabe told me, no, there's actually a skeleton inside you. And there were several reasons why that could not be true. First of all, skeletons are really tall. They're like adult size, and I was 6 years old. I was like, there's a skeleton inside me. And he told me, well, go ahead, feel your, and skeletons had bones, so like there's no bones inside me. And he said, yeah, feel your fingers. And I was like, it's like feel your ribs. And I felt my ribs, and I thought, oh my God, I've got a rib cage. And then I felt my wrists and my arms, and I thought, oh my God, I've got bones. And then after a few minutes, I was brave enough to feel my face. And I noticed that I had eye sockets. And this was absolutely terrifying. And then I felt my jaw, and the jaw on skeletons are obviously the most scary part, because the mouth is just way too big. Like, mouths are not supposed to be like all the way back here. And I looked at my teeth and I thought, oh my God, there's a fucking skeleton inside me. This was traumatizing. And I know you think it's funny, but here you had my 2 separate worlds, where all of a sudden I had the world of the dead that was inside part of the world of the good. And I had this evil dead thing inside me, and I was terrified. And then I thought, okay, just calm down. I've been living 60 years with a skeleton inside me, and nothing terrible has happened, so the skeleton might not be a horrible person. And I thought, okay, he's cool. It was a he, because all skeletons are boys. I thought, okay, maybe I can live with the skeleton. And then I thought, you know what, this is actually pretty cool, because I'm terrified of skeletons, but here I am actually a skeleton, which means I'm the scary person. When you're 6 years old, you always try to scare adults, and they always pretend to be scared, but they suck at pretending to be scared. It's like, oh, that's so scary. It's like, you don't do that when you're scared. You scream and cry, and adults never scream and cry. And here, all of a sudden, I felt really powerful. I thought, okay, I've got a skeleton in me, and I came to terms with it, and that was cool. And then I turned 7. And turning 7 is a huge deal. I grew up in France, and in France, 7 is the age of reason. And as all French people do when they turn 7, I turned into an atheist rationalist. I figured that everything could be explained by reason, and everything had a scientific explanation except for skeletons. But everything else that was scary had a scientific explanation. There was no reason to be scared of anything ever. And so if the thought entered my mind that there was a monster under my bed, which happened very often, I figured, okay, I'll just think reasonably. Monsters don't exist. My parents told me so. My parents know everything. monsters don't exist, therefore there's no monsters under my bed, therefore I'm not scared. And that kind of worked a little bit, but not completely, and I would still be kind of scared. So I decided, okay, maybe I should try to be an empiricist. That's actually exactly what I thought when I was 6. And I looked and decided, well, I can use my senses. There is no monster in my bed. If I can't convince my mind of this, maybe I can just look under the bed. Because I know there won't be a monster, and I will be convinced of it. So I look under my bed, there were no monsters, and I great for about 3 minutes, and then I look again, and be like, okay, there's no monsters. And so then I had figured out everything, and I was never scared of anything. Everything was perfect. I had my world figured out, the living, the dead, the scary, the nice. And if there were bad people sometimes, but I wasn't too scared of them because you could just use rationalism. If a murderer came in, I could just talk to them and they would understand that they should not commit the crime through logical reasoning. So everything was fine. The only danger was monsters with whom you can't reason, but monsters didn't exist. So there were no problems. However, a few months later, my father took me to a court in Normandy. There's lots of fucking courts in Normandy. And I was just walking around, and all of a sudden I look up, and there, I'm not kidding, was a monster. There was a fucking monster right next to me. There was about a 4-meter long shark that a fisherman had just caught. And when you're 7, and you can see how tall I am at 30, at 7 I wasn't very tall. A 4-meter shark is fucking terrifying. And a shark fulfills all the requirements of a monster as per the definition of a 7-year-old. A big, scary thing that has sharp teeth and scars all over it. And it was hanging, and it had a fish sticking out of his mouth, confirming the fact that it was a monster, because only monsters eat living things. And behind it was the fisherman boat that was flooded in about 2 inches of red blood. This is the event that changed me, because that had cognitive dissonance on so many levels that it just completely changed my mind. First of all, so monsters do exist. So my parents told me monsters don't exist, but obviously they do. There's a monster right there, and it ate a fish, and it's terrifying. It's got sharp teeth. Second of all, if monsters do exist, they're normally killed by, princes in shining armor. But here there were just 3 fishermen with no teeth that cursed and smoked rolled cigarettes or something. And they didn't really look like Prince Philip from Sleeping Beauty. But even more shocking was that in the boat was the blood. Blood, as I had understood it, was something that happened when a bad thing hurt a good thing, blood happened. When a bad thing hurt a human, there would be blood. I did not know that monsters could bleed. And here you had the shark. The shark had blood, which meant that, by my definition, something bad had killed something good. But it was a monster. So through all that, I suddenly realized that the complications that life kept showing to me from the ages from 0 to 6 would just never end. And that really everything would always be way more fucking complicated than I would expect. And I haven't had any revelations since then.